Okay. It's fine. Okay. Audio problem might be on your end. All right, fantastic. And otherwise, yeah, general chat is where I'm speaking. Anyways, so another reason we have this 24-hour and 24-hour high and 24-hour low of Pyre Phantom staked is to give you also the range of, I guess you could say, past interest, because this is going to give you kind of like a it's like forecasting information for kind of expecting how the same amount of yield is going to kind of get spread across the epochs, if that makes sense. I know that's not exactly visible, but consider this. Let's say that we have background. Let's say we have background volume that is in fact interesting. This background volume is in fact based around like a large purchase of Z share, right? Well, we can just talk about the scenario right here. Well, that background volume is going to turn into a high yield. It's going to turn into a high yield incantation for when that incantation gets distributed, if that makes sense. So, and Alessio, can you hear me? Because apparently other people are having audio problems. Okay, so that's going to turn into a high yield, right? Does that make sense? And when you see a high yield, you're going to have a record here. Yeah, exactly. Well, Alessio, what that means is that there are new people playing. Does that make sense? And that's always a good sign. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you, Joker. Awesome to hear. Does that make sense? I know. Read docs indeed. But why is so much staked? Yep. Oh, Joker, I've had to do it myself. And by the way, Joker, right now, I'm probably going to try to metatrage. Exactly. I'm going to try to metatrage on another computer with in fact, the treasury DEX, because metatrage, by the way, also helps the DEX. I don't know if you guys understand that, but metatrage is, again, you're basically, what are we doing here? We're going to take 2 ohm, we're going to fucking burn it to create Pyre Phantom, and then we're going to sell that Pyre Phantom back for 2 ohm. Does that make sense? Like, that is in fact helpful for the DEX, because that is also creating what you could consider a matchstick volume. Like, it's a volume that kind of catalyzes volume elsewhere. So this is, of course, a beta test, and that is also why volume is low. And again, we did set the swap fee super high just to kind of put a seatbelt on this thing during beta. But I want you guys to understand that swap fee will not always be that fucking high. We will in fact have lower swap fees. Anyway, so right now I have 2 ohm available. I can need this amount for it. This is useful. Phantom is, of course, the cheapest gas ever heard of. I can do the same with 3 ohm. Look at that. Fantastic. No, never mind. I was going to do it with Xeon, but I realized that's not actually profitable. Okay. So, what I can now do let me make sure that I have the right balances here. Anyway, so these little meterage transactions, like as the coin price climbs, granted it's a little bit harder to do on Phantom because 3 ohm and 2 ohm are in fact gigantic. Z ohm, you can see, is benefiting plenty. You're not wrong, Alessio, but like yeah, or even in the IWV. But the thing is, Alessio, the boardroom, like the boardrooms of Tomb Forks, they are in fact meant to be like the more passive position, and the Incantation Witch Vault meant to be more active. And I don't think I described that yet. But yeah, so like night game. Oh yeah, for sure. Night game is more passive, even though it has active elements as well. Night game is more passive, yeah, even though it has active elements, because you can't ever be perfectly passive. And then Witch game is more active, even though it has passive elements. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. And the thing is, Alessio, I don't think people can really wrap their heads around the idea that red candles can be good. Like, I think that is still, in fact, that's like heresy. And it also kind of implies that, like, you haven't really built anything that's economically robust to the point where, like, a red candle can be okay. Or they haven't built anything that kind of... well, I think you understand what I mean. Anyway. So... Anyway, let's look actually... Let's see if those few transactions have done anything to volume. Nope, nothing really noticeable yet. Let me see if I have to refresh it. But no, not a huge bunch. But sometimes it takes like an hour for it to kick up the speed, but no big deal. The point being is, what am I talking about here? So, first of all, look at this spread right here. Total stakes in previous epoch 25, Alessio. Total stakes in Ultimate Hour 3 and total stakes in Ultimate Moment 2. Does that make sense? Here is an example of a curve that makes no sense. So you're completely correct. People are not reading the docs. Does that make sense? As you guys should be aware, the majority of this chunk right here, this 25, not the majority, not like 12 or 13, but like almost at least 25%, and if not more than 50%, should be in the Ultimate Moment. That's like when you know the game is getting played correctly. Like, is this seeing the majority or like a large chunk of its stakes showing up in the last 10 minutes? Does that make sense to you guys? Do you guys see this? So right now, you in fact have, what do we have? We have low volume in the decks, which by the way, this is fine. Like, it's okay to have 1,200. I needed $100 of volume to get the spark lit. We have $1,200 of volume, which is more than we had for many days on the Phantom side. Yeah, exactly. Alessio, that is why I'm playing this round as a usurper. Does that make sense? Because clearly the right thing to do for the decks right now is to actually just usurp. Like, because this right here, this 0.81, you know, why would I want to risk smolders for less than 1%? Yeah. Oh, you tried? Well, you know what? Usurping is in fact a little bit difficult. What you can do, Alessio, is you can wait until people sell and then buy in and then usurp. But then maybe there's not enough yield. Then, right? Maybe there's not enough reserved incants there to usurp incants. But yeah, that's how that works. And well, you know what, Alessio? Right now we've got 1,000 Pyre Phantom staked. We can see that there's 21 wallets. We can look at the holders, right? So right now we see one guy has 500. Like, one guy by himself is 500. One guy is 284 by himself. 197 and 153 are perfectly sane amounts to have staked. These people are all in the correct amount. These amounts are sane. I mean, these amounts are kind of like, what would you describe? These amounts are illiterate. They're just not literate. But the point being there is, it is what it is. Yeah, I don't know what else to say there. The point being there is that just is what it is. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, from this amount right here, total stakes in previous epoch, total stakes in Ultimate Hour, total stakes in Ultimate Moment, this is an indication that they don't know how to play. And if you guys don't understand, here I can give you guys a little bit of a an instructional poem here. Yeah, exactly, Alessio. That's my bet as well. That's my bet as well because these guys are staked in and they're waiting. And if they're waiting, they must not know how to play. Does that make sense? Like either that or they have, again, what is it? The risk tolerance of a kamikaze pilot on their birthday. So lowest to buy and latest to stake. Like that's the way you make money here. A great time to buy is right after everybody else kind of like gets out. But that's also well, you guys get how it works, I think. Do you guys understand this image here in general chat? Do you guys understand that? Do you guys understand what that means? Fantastic, Alessio. Fantastic, Fantasso. Fantastic. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I don't know. Like usurping is the play right here. This is a great way that this AMA is called how much yield is too much or too little. This yield, according to like the way that the IWV is played, if we have 21 staked wallets, right, and then we have total stakes in the previous epoch was 25, if that makes sense. Let's put it this way, Alessio. It means that 4 people knew how to play. Does that make sense? The other players are dust right now, but like 4 players have figured the game out and 21 players don't. I mean, we know for a fact that these wallets, these holders, well, again, most of them, or not even most, but I guess 6 of them are in fact just dust wallets. It could be that these other wallets are in fact playing, but I don't really know. And we know for a fact that these amounts here are, they're overexposed. Yeah, they're overexposed. So these ones right here, I would say the ones under 200 are perhaps a little bit more savvy to the game rules. And again, if people want to learn this way, they can, but what's going to happen to them? We're going to probably usurp and then smolder them a bunch of times, and then they're not even going to get fucking yield. So, I'll tell you this. I don't expect that this number 1 guy or this number 2 guy will move. Does that make sense? So even if 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they all move, there's still going to be usurping opportunity. Does that make sense to you guys? And if you go through multiple times, the even better, if that makes sense. Anyway, we can go back to this chart here. I had to adjust this uptick line because even though I believe that it's consolidating, and by the way, it's no longer in a downtrend. You guys do see that it's moving a little bit more to the right here. Even if I took this line right here and I put it closer to like this hot, it is in fact like moving rightwards as it should. Do you guys remember me saying, get the chart to move rightwards and the upwards movement takes care of itself? Do you guys remember me saying that? And do you guys know why? Yeah, absolutely, Clantonso. Yeah, because the thing is, we would want to assume that all the players know how to play. Does that make sense? So right now, it looks like the majority of this amount does not know how to play. Maybe the majority of players, like maybe these guys right here, maybe all of these guys do know how to play. Does that make sense? What are we crying about? Oh, 3 days, 4 hours ago? Yeah, exactly. How much is it? 285? Yeah, so that is some brave soul. Yeah, that is the perfect for the read docs right there. Just read docs. Yeah, that staked 3 days. Let's look at this guy. How long did he stake? And he also staked 3 days, 4 hours ago. Oh, sorry, that's the number 2 guy you're looking at. But this guy right here, the top guy, he staked 1 hour and 32 minutes ago. And it looks like he staked, first he staked 96, then he staked another 400 on top of that. So I'm going to assume this guy does not know how to play because he, first of all, just smoldered himself, no reason at all. Sometimes it makes sense to do that, but Clearly, we know that this guy probably does not know how to play, and we know for a fact that number 2 does not know how to play. And by the way, Alessio, you're basically figuring out that you can actually look at these guys and see, you can look at these wallets. Oh, look at this. This person also does not know how to play. Yeah, so number 3 does not know how to play. Number 4. Let's look at number 4. Number 4 does not know how to play. So this again is, whether you just park your money in there or not, you will contribute to volume because the people who do know how to play are going to usurp your incants. This guy, well, 6 hours is still not really good, man. 6 hours means he should have gotten the fuck out. So I don't know who that person is. Oh, yeah. The question about... is this the image to watch to understand when staking is profitable? Yeah, so, Clantonso, yeah, I didn't mean to get distracted by what Alessio was saying. But yeah, so, you should kind of assume that the players know what they're doing. Like, think about defending yourself. Does that make sense? You guys understand that, like, you know, imagine, Clantonso, you know for a fact that at least the 8 people playing, or perhaps not the 8, at least half the audience here today understands how to play. Does that make sense? So if half the audience here today understands how to play, then they're going to play the correct way, in which case you need to defend yourself from them. Does that all make sense? And by the way, if you're listening, we use general chat for the chat because I don't watch the stage channel chat. Using the stage channel chat also doesn't it doesn't provide for a way to let lurkers and other people in the server learn. If that makes sense. So general chat I think is better for actual correspondence here. And so they don't know how to play. Like, they don't know how to play. We just confirmed that a bunch of the majority of this money here does not know how to play. So effectively speaking, we know that all of this yield, this 0.81%, you can in fact capture that yield by looping through multiple times, and also from looping through multiple times, you will in fact smolder the amount that's getting staked here either way. Now, consider this. When you have Pyre Phantom staked, it is like, oh, this is good. They're holding it illiquid. Well, at the same time, like, this is not, it's not nearly as good as knowing for a fact that from getting smoldered, they can't even sell as much as they had to acquire to get in. Does that make sense? So when you get smoldering, you are in fact decreasing the supply, and what you're doing is you're increasing the amount of future scenarios where the coin is considered scarce. And if the coin is considered scarce, it becomes more valuable. Because again, this coin right here, Pyre Phantom, is in fact the highest real yield token on the Phantom Opera. Or I guess Phantom Sonic, whatever the fuck it's called now. I think it's still Opera right now. But on the Phantom Network, this coin is the highest real yield token. So, like, it's not a shit coin. It just perhaps is not driving millions of dollars in volume to it just yet. But hey, it can scale to that level. So, Clanton, so going back to your question about this chart right here, I originally wanted to train people to assume that 50 stakers were happening. So you would look at 25 here, and then what you could do is you could assume that that's going to be -3. Let's say that that's going to be expected total stakes per epoch. Let's assume that if we saw 25, we can say it's going to be 30 this time. Does that make sense? So if we assume there's going to be 30 stakes, oh, by the way, there's more wallet staking now. Are we getting close? No, still 30 minutes. Still 30 minutes away. But maybe you guys are just flogging them. And by the way, this is flogging is good practice as well, but it does look like the amount went up a little bit. I don't know. So, yeah, you're bored. Yeah, it's fine. It makes sense. And by the way, progress is not really linear. Does that make sense? Like, you still make progress though. It's just kind of hidden. If you were to do weightlifting for a year, I want you guys to understand that you're not always going to like max out every single day in the gym that you go. You're not necessarily going to feel like you're making gains every single day that you go. Does that make sense? So you have to kind of just realize that it's mostly about being consistent and that progress is made. So like, I know that right now we're looking at the fucking you ain't getting swole. Yeah, but the thing is, the point is Joker. I'll have you know, when I was a bit younger, I even did weightlifting, and I had a personal trainer friend, and this guy was motivated all the fucking time, right? He was motivated to lift weights every day. Like, he would just be, yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, the thing is, my personal trainer, some days, he didn't really feel like maxing out. Like, I could tell he had a fight with his wife once and shit, and he just was not really focused. But at the same time, he was like, no, we're still going to do, like, the complete curriculum, and then we're going to go home. Like, so it doesn't matter that the fact that, oh, sure. But I think that, the Joker is here, indeed. But the fact of the matter is I think that, like, he just understood at that point, like, it's more about being consistent even when you don't necessarily make, you might not see linear progression, if that makes sense. So I know that we're looking at 24-hour volume of $1,200 here, and people might be thinking, oh, is it broken? It's not broken. Like, you just see valleys. Like, it's a sine wave. Like, it's a fucking, it's a waveform. And that's I think a lot of people, the difference between success and unsuccess is that certain people realize that you don't have linear progression and they motivate themselves regardless. Other people, they stop seeing linear progression and then they get demotivated enough to quit. And that's really just the main key difference between successful and unsuccessful. So right here, I don't want you guys to think that, oh no, it's only 1,200 and it was 8,000 the other day. Like, this is okay. Again, the lows before we started the IWV, like the volume lows, Aeroscripts, I don't know what that is actually, but the lows that we had before we started were like in the hundreds. They were like $100 a day. Yeah. Should I look it up later? Okay. Well, anyway, hilariously, Dex Screener doesn't track that, which is kind of useful because it means that obviously volume tracking dashboards is something that could be volume tracking dashboards is something that DeFi could benefit a lot from, and perhaps maybe in later phases of PyroSwap, that's something we can do. Because this is really the first DEX that kind of, I think, is tuned more towards being a liquidity provider as an instrument and a vehicle, an investment vehicle, than other DEXs, which, in my opinion, have no idea what they're fucking doing. So I just wanted to mention to you guys, like, don't worry about linear progression. Like, this works whether the progress is linear or not. You guys have all been around in crypto, in Web3, long enough to know that things go up and then they go down. The way that you win in any environment like that is you be consistent where everything else is inconsistent. Yeah, if that makes sense. And that is sort of what this environment is meant to kind of provide. Yeah, that's basically it. Well, anyway, let me go back to Clanton's question about this chart. And I'll copy this and I'll just paste this right back into the general chat, so we can keep it at the front of our mind. Yeah, so you should, for your own defense, and by the way, Clantonto, now that you know how to play, by all means, you can get a little bit creative. But on the first day of training, I wanted to, in fact, teach people to play, hey, if you see that there's 30 stakers, and I'll pull up the fucking PyroSwap here. If you see that we saw 25 in the previous epoch, and now there's 23 total staked wallets, you know for a fact that I'm not staked yet, right? You can see that on the screen. And I'm playing with a small amount, right? You don't see if you saw a little orange dot here, that's how you know I'd be staked, or if you saw any number. But the point being is, if you were to assume that 30 stakes would happen, the best way to defend yourself is to just discount all EPRs by 3%. Meaning that, like, hey, in order for me to even see 1% on the epoch, this EPR here would need to be what? 4.12%? Do you guys see that? We're in the second row of the chart. Do you guys see that in general chat? We're in the second row. So I'm looking at 30, I'm looking at -3, and I'm looking at for scenario 1, which is a net 1% gain, you want to see 4.12%. For scenario 3, for target 3, you want to see 19.59% on the EPR. And the good news is some of you guys have seen those yields. Some of you guys have actually seen 19% on the EPR and have even made them. A lot of you guys have. Am I wrong? Yeah, I think there was a day before that I think everybody made like 30% in a single epoch. Very nice, right? Who can complain about 30%? All right. I'm checking to make sure nobody's talking in the stage chat channel. Let's see. What are we looking at here? Oh, by the way, I really like the fact that I made the Pyre bot in the chat announce the ultimate hour and the ultimate moment. I think that really adds a little bit something extra, doesn't it, guys? Don't you guys like that? Yeah. So, you know, as you guys can see, I don't know if you've been watching, but a few people are trickling in here over the days, right? This is, by the way, this is only day 7. This is the day 7 of our beta test. We're now having more. We're now having more problems with the swap than we are with the IWV. Does that make sense? Like, so now people are saying, "Oh shit, the swap is fucking up." That might just be a liquidity problem. I don't really know. And also, we did learn a shit ton about DEXs in general just from doing this. I want you guys to know this. I'll give you guys a little bit of advance. This version of the DEX, this is like our version 0. Does that make sense? So have you guys ever seen on DEX Screener before, like let's say we go to like Spooky Swap or whatever, you'll see that they have, maybe not Spooky Swap, let's go to, let's look at Trader Joe for a second. You'll see that on Trader Joe, do you guys see that they have version 2.1, version 2.1, version 2.1, then they'll have things like, do you guys see that they have a prefix to their liquidity pairs? Do you guys see these? I guess version 2.1 is the only one it delineates. Yep. So anyway, this version right now of PyreSwap, which we can go back to Phantom here. Oh, and by the way, I'm already getting asked if PyreSwap can get listed on DEX Screener, and I'm like, listen, if they do that, they need to understand that this is version 0.07. So that is literally how it's written. Version 0.07, that literally just means it is a vanilla Uni V2 fork with a 0.7% swap fee. Does that make sense? So that is how we're calling it. The real PyreSwap is not going to be a vanilla Uni V2 fork. It will mostly be vanilla to Uni V2, but we're going to remove the sync safeguard. We will remove the sync safeguard because it doesn't serve the DEX. It doesn't serve the DEX or any DEX in my opinion. And we will also potentially change the way that fees are that swap fees are collected. So right now we use a system called a summoning circle, which is actually a modified version of Brew Boo. Are you guys familiar with Spooky Swap's Brew Boo? But later on, we might just change the way that fees are collected. In fact, that way we can siphon fees off illiquid. Like it's not like concentrated liquidity does, but we might in fact keep fees illiquid in the first fucking place. But we'll always have, by the way, we will always have this factory integrated into it. And the LP on this factory will always feed the incantation, but rather we will just end up feeding the incantation from like multiple different configurations, if that makes sense. Because all we have to do is just make sure that when we click Transpire Epoch here, what do we want? We just want to make sure that some amount of token ends up going to the meet address, right? So as long as we're sending token to the meet address, like we're good, right? Would you guys agree? You guys get what I'm saying here? Because as long as it ends up in the meet address, the IWV fires pretty well, at least in my opinion. Anyway, oh, and then later on, the version 1.01, it'll be version 1.04, we'll have version 1.07, and version 1.10. So the next version of the factory will have 4 different swap fees, and the swap fees will be 1%, 0.7%, 0.4%, and 0.1%. So we will in fact have 2 different LPs, 2 different factories that have a fucking that have a 0.7% swap fee, but because I do like that swap fee for other reasons, but we won't have it where it'll have, it won't have syncing involved, and I mean sync like this, not SINK but SYNC. And that's the way that I kind of want to explain the factory on Deck Screener. If that makes sense. So anyway, oh, great question, Fexer. That is because we have, first of all, not everybody's going to want the same fee tier. Does that make sense? And additionally, there are pros and cons to different fee tiers. Like the ones with lower fee tiers generally get more like volume from arbitrage bots and like background stuff like that. But the stuff where you have them at higher fee tiers, this is a little bit beyond the scope of regular AMA, and I normally would only talk about it inside the circus. But you can actually create volatility sensing instruments. So let's put it this way. Let's go look at actual. Let's go look at Pirate Swap on Deck Screener here, unknown decks. And by the way, that's how I find it every time, so you guys can see how I do it. I just search for the coin, then I click for the unknown decks. So imagine here if you had a Z-Ohm 2-ohm pair, right? So we had a Z-Ohm 2-ohm pair. It had $15 of volume. We have about 2,300 in liquidity. You know, not super exciting, but the thing is, its volume might be a little higher. Its volume might be a little higher if the fee was lower, because it would have an easier time reconciling all these prices right here. If that makes sense, that might not make sense, but if that makes sense, you're getting somewhere. So lower fees. Like let's say we were to search for, let's just look at 2-ohm. If we look at 2-ohm, you'll see that it's worth 5.7 here on Spooky, but it's worth Okay, on Spooky it's 5757. On Redemption it's 5775. On here it's 5798. Do you see that on Pirate Swap? That has three different in the decimal places. It's kind of offered at three different prices. Does that make sense? And you can even see on Sushi Swap it's 5.6 actually. Interesting. $8 of liquidity over there on Sushi Swap. And what is PLD paired against 2-ohm? I have no idea what that is at all. Anyway, then we have 2-ohm against Z-ohm. Anyway, the point being is all of these pairs, Spooky has a point.